to start. So yeah, thanks Linda and Dwayne. I know it's been a while since I've done one of these talks. And for today, I think I'll just start basically because I had a slide. No, slide has come fast. Okay, so my name is Laurence. I'm a software developer. I've worked with Angular for 4 years. I work for this company called Legion. They are manufacturing / access systems, but you can think about it as like a hardware company. But they use .NET and Angular as their stack on Azure. And yeah, my main role is front-end development, like guiding, building UI. So I've been working with Angular for, I think, 4 years. I think as Angular keeps growing, I feel like I want to go back and try other new technologies like React. I worked with React actually, React and React Native before, and then I've also done a bit of Svelte. I've done a bit of Quick. Haven't done Vue, but it's one of the ones that I'm interested in doing. So I've worked with a lot of UI frameworks, but Angular always remains interesting because I feel like they're trying to be more. They're trying to keep up with the times, and I feel like they're doing a good job of that. Trying to build new features, and I think that's why I like Angular so far. If there's a framework I'd pick to start building a project for someone, and I'd have to ship it in like 2 days, I'd probably pick Angular because I'm most familiar with it. So that's my experience with Angular. Alafu hobbies, I do running, writing, reading, cooking on the side. So that's me. So for this talk, which I chose, it's directive composition. I'm going to assume some knowledge of Angular. If there's something I mention and you don't, it feels unclear, I need to clarify, please let me know. I'm assuming people know Angular or have used Angular before. I'm going to use version 19. So version 19 has all the components, directives, and pipes are standalone by default. So that's what I'll be using for the demo at least. But anything actually applies to previous versions of Angular. I think up until the standalone flag was introduced, this still applies. But before that, the directive composition. Actually, I'm not sure when the directive composition API was introduced. I need to clarify that. But for this particular demo, it's going to be standalone. So please ask questions. Yeah, just stop me. I'll be happy to answer. It's not going to be a long presentation, so hopefully I'm leaving time for questions as we go. So as I start, directives 101. So directives are basically how I think about them. They give a component or a HTML element added functionality. Think like tooltips, custom styling, validation of inputs, changing of attributes or adding other attributes. So that's when you reach out for a directive. You want to add functionality to a component or to a HTML element. Yeah, also in the past, they had the ng-for and the ng-if directive that is being phased out in favor of the, how do you call it? In favor of the inbuilt control flow and inbuilt, inbuilt control flow. Yeah, I think that's what it's called, with the @ symbol. And we'll see some of that as we go. So that's a small overview. So this is how a directive is usually created using the @directive decorator with the selector, and then you can add whatever functionality. I kept it simple just to see how you can create a directive. Since this is Angular 19, by default, we don't have to say whether a component is standalone. It's assumed that all the components are standalone by default. So you have to actually you toggle the flag off if you want the directive to be not standalone. Yeah, so then after learning about directives, then so what's the Directive Composition API? How I think about this is it gives us the ability to paste different directives together and kind of like, I think about them as Legos. You can sort of like bring two directives together and build a more powerful directive. It allows you to sort of like reuse your directives and build bigger directives and not have to repeat yourself. So that's the use of it. Yeah, that's a small intro. I'll give an example here before I dive into the demo. So here we have, first of all, the one thing to note, the Directive Composition API only works with standalone directives. It doesn't work with directives that are not standalone, so it has to be standalone. So in this example, we have a highlights tooltip directive, and here I think we missed the end the square bracket for the selector. But if we have two directives, like the previous one, where we had the highlight on focus directive, and then the mat, in Angular material, there's this one directive that you can use to sort of like highlight, like add a mat tooltip to a component. And if you want to, let's say, like make one directive using both of those like separate directives, like here, the highlight on focus and the mat tooltip, we can sort of like add them together, and then we get this one sort of like super directive. So I'll go to the demo. I think the first thing I'll do is go through the code. And the code it's just a simple, it's a simple form here. We have like two inputs, and this is a dropdown, and then this is an input that has an autocomplete. So we have some directives here that I worked on just for the demo. The autocomplete directive, we won't focus on this as much, but we have two directives here. I'll circle back to one of the use cases of directives is you can use them to build validators for your template-driven forms. So for this form, if we take a look at our form right here, we have two inputs. We have a mat option, and then this is what you see here on the dropdown that has a, we're using the ng form to reference the form, and then we're using the name, which is the reference planet. So basically this one, what it's doing, it's telling you to like, okay, pick a reference planet, like pick Mercury, Venus, or Earth, and then choose a planet that's farther away from the sun than that planet. So if you choose Venus, it tells us like, hey, you need to pick a planet that's farther away from Venus. And how we're doing that for this particular use case is we are referencing let me actually make this bigger. So here we are referencing the form itself using the planet form. And then in the controls, we have the reference planet here, which is, if we go to our template, it's just pointing to this particular input. So it's telling us like choose a planet that's farther away from, in this case, it's Venus. So it's just basically a form, and then it has, this one has an input with a autocomplete. So the autocomplete allows you to, for example, if you want to like, if you type M, it gives us all the ones that have M, J with J, S with the ones that contain whatever characters. So that's the autocomplete. And then we have some math errors. If we don't select a planet, this should actually, it doesn't give us an error right now. So, but it's supposed to be required. I think I need to add that. Okay, yeah, required. So if I add required here, and then I go and then I don't select it, so we get that error message here saying that the planet is required. So if we have this form and we want to add some validation, for example, if you select Venus, and if you select, let's say, Mars, and then we choose a planet like Earth, that's technically not correct. So I built a directive that handles that use case, and that's this one that's called is further than directive. So I won't go through how to create a validator, but I'll just explain what this does. So it takes as input the reference planet, and then it checks the distance. If it's, if it's not farther than the sun, if it's closer to the sun than the reference planet, then it returns an error. So it's implementing the validator class that then allows us to like pass this validator as a directive itself to the component. So let's actually do that and see how that will work. So if you go to the components, we need to import that directive, and I think it's called it's further than reference. So I'll just copy this and then go to the component, and then I need to import that, and then I need to add this directive to that form, and then it's right there. So it's telling us we need to pass an input, and the input is the reference planet. So the reference planet is actually, let's see. In this case, our reference planet is, are we passing? No, we're not passing the reference. Okay, let me actually see what this is further than directly. So we're passing in, okay, you're passing the reference. Yes. So you're passing the reference, and then the whatever planet you pass in the input will be passed in the validate form. So if you go back to the form, our reference planet, I think, will be reference planets. And then if you save that, and then let's select Mars, then we do Mercury, you see we get the error message. The good thing is if you're using template-driven forms with custom validators, and then we pass in the error message, we can reference that error message here. And then, so I'll do that here, just passing the error message using the new control flow syntax, the F. So I'll just copy this. And then the error message that we actually want to check is this one. And then I'll just copy this. And then just customize the error message to say something like the planet is not farther from the sun. And yeah, and then our planet has a name, so reference planet.name. Okay, and then we'll see the error message if we select a different planet. So let's do Mercury. So Mercury, we see we get the error message. So I do have two validators. I want to show Directive Composition API using both of those two. So I'll just walk through briefly the other validator, which kind of tells us if we, like, let's say, if we pass in something like, I don't know, like, say, chicken, it should give us an error message that doesn't exist. So I'll pass this validator, just copy this quickly to the components. I'll import is valid directive, and then this one doesn't take an input. You just pass it in because it checks against the list of planets, and the list of planets is here. It's just a static code, but this can be anything depending on your use case. So if you go back to the form, we pass that is valid planet directive, and then if we save that, and then let's try entering chicken again. Did I do the right thing? Okay, import is valid planets. Okay, I misspelled it. I think, yes, I did. Okay. Yeah, and then it's not how you spell chicken. like if we do, we'll just do the same thing for the error message, and then copy that error message that we had is invalid planet. That's the error message that we customized for this. And then we'll just do not valid. Okay. So not valid. So the Directive Composition API allows us to, like, let's say we had wanted to just have one directive. For example, if you had let's say a list of different inputs, like 50, and then you wanted to use both of those directives on those 50 form fields, you can kind of like compose them into two directives, and we'll do that from scratch. I'll create a new directive called is farther away, away and valid directive.ts. And then we'll do the same syntax for creating a new directive. And then our directives need a selector, so we'll just create a custom selector called is farther away and valid. So in order to create a directive that's composed of two directives, as we saw, the selector has this property called host directives that takes an array of directives that you want to use. Just do export class is farther away and valid directive. And then in our host directives, then we can import those two directives. So the first one is valid, I think. Is valid planet directive, and the second one is farther away. Yeah. Okay. No, that's not the right one. Is farther than reference. So here you notice the Angular actually it's trying to tell you something. So one of our directives has a value that can't be determined statically. This actually, if you go to look at our directive here itself, and let's see if I need to import actually this. Okay, that's imported. No, that was the right one. So our directive actually has a required input. So if you have directive that needs an input, then you need to use a different syntax for declaring a directive. So passing the directive here directly, and then in the inputs, you can actually pass in the inputs. So it takes an array of inputs that you want to expose to the host directives. So in this case, our inputs is called is farther than reference. So we need to expose that here. And the interesting thing here is you can actually rename the name of the input to be something else when you're declaring, when you're like using the Directive Composition API. So let's say we want to rename this input because we're using this input here for the previous directive, just to make it clear that this is the input from the host from this new directive. We can do reference to. Okay. New. Okay, I'll just do planet reference to. Okay, and then we just need to pass this directive here to our component itself. So I'll take this out. I'll take both of this out because then we just created one new directive, and then apologies. And then we need to pass in the name of the directive. So you take this out, and then it's farther than reference. Okay, take out is valid planets, and it's farther than valid. Then we see the error message. Can't bind. Okay, so we need to pass in the planet reference to. So Here we take this out here, and then we do planets reference to, and that should work. So we should get the same functionality we had before, just with one directive. So let's use Mars. If you do chicken, it's not valid, and then we do Mercury, it's not farther than Mars. If you do Jupiter, that works. We can actually also rename this input to be the same as what the directive is called. So if we alias our input as the name of the directive, save that, go back to our directive, and then I'll just replace this with that, makes our code smaller, and we keep the same functionality. And then that should work. So we should have the same results. So that's a brief demo. I want to do another, I'll just walk through a different example that I wrote for a compose directive. This is the one that I had before. And then I have two other directives here. I'll just go through what both of them do. We have a directive here called preview. So preview directive takes as an input a planet, and then it takes a template reference. A template reference is just an entry template. And then it's passed in, so these are the two inputs. It needs a template reference and a planet, and then it creates a preview using that template, passes in. I'll just expand this so that it makes sense. So it uses the view container ref to create an embedded view. This is not relevant to the talk, but I just want to demo what the preview directive does. So if you pass in the preview directive to our component here, and our preview planet directive. So I'll go back to a component and then pass in preview directive, and then our preview directive, we pass that here, preview planets. So a preview planet takes as input two things. It takes the preview template. So we pass in preview templates, which we had a reference to that here, and then pass it here. And then preview planets, we need to pass in the planets that we want to preview. In this case, the planet that we select here. So, and you'll see what it's going to do. Since this can be null, I'll just tell TypeScript to ignore that. And then basically what you'll see is once you select a planet, it's going to show the picture of the planet. So I'll do Earth now and somewhere else. It's just throwing it on the screen. So that's, if you ever have a use case for that, that's an interesting use case. And then there's another directive called select. So directive, you can also bind to events based on that element. So here we're binding to two events that we are interested in. So we want to actually, so this directive, let's say you're using it to bind to check if a particular key was entered. So in this case, if the key that was pressed was either enter or tab, we want to return true. If it's anything else, we want to return false. And we want to combine this with this other directive, the preview directive, that will then, once we hit on a planet and then either click enter or tab, it will display this preview somewhere on the screen. Let me reload and then go back to our select just to finish up. So yeah, if this doesn't make sense, ask questions. I'll just go through the compose directive for combining both of those two directives. So the select directive here, we are binding that to the host directives to use the API. And then we have the preview directive, and we're exposing the inputs as two different things, separate from the other directives that we had before. So a small walkthrough on what's happening here is after the ng after view units, we are keeping track of two things: the template reference and the selected value, and then we are we're kind of like detaching it from the previous view, and then we're attaching it again. And yeah, so let's see if we can make it so that when you click enter next, like it doesn't, you see how it works now. Whenever you select a planet, it puts it in the screen. But we want it so that when you hit enter, that's when it puts it in the screen. So here, when we have the, so that's actually what happens. So if selected is true and has a preview template, it's going to attach it to the screen. So if you go back to our components, and I'll intentionally break the app so that you see one other interesting thing. So we need to import the directive itself, the select and preview, and then we go back here, then import that directive, and then we need to add the selector to our component. That's the input. And then we need to provide the template, select preview templates. So here we have planet preview. And then we also need to provide as input something else, which is the planet reference. And I think that is, yeah, that should be this planet. Okay, and then I want to say that the app is going to break because we did something interesting. And you see, Angular tells us that I'll zoom in so that you can see directives can only match one element. So what's happening here, since you already combined the two directives here, like this preview directive is already inside of this, it's going to complain that you have two instances of the same directive. So when you're using Directive Composition API, just make sure you have one instance of that directive applied to a template or a component. So we need to check this out, and then that should work. When I reload, that should work again. So you notice what we had before is when we selected a planet, it was putting it on the screen, but here it doesn't do that immediately. We have to type in planet, and then I'm going to type enter, and then it's going to select it again. We do another planet. It's the same one. To Earth, then tab. Okay, tab is not working. I'll just do enter for now. But yeah, so yeah, that's a brief introduction to directive composition. And yeah, I think the use case for this is mostly when you have two directives, one or more directives that you want to use at the same component, and you find that you're using that same structure a lot across your application, then that's when you reach for the Directive Composition API. The other one use case is the order in which the directives execute. So if we want, that's one other thing to note. So if we go to our compose directive, and we'll just do, I'll go to both of these directives, and then I'll add a constructor to just show you the order in which they execute in Angular. So I'll just do console plug, and then I'll just log the name of the directive, and then go to the other one, which is preview. Yeah, constructor, console.log, preview planet, and then go to the last compose directive, do the same thing. This would have been faster with AI. Okay, no, I'm doing the wrong thing. Constructor. Okay, console.log, and then our directive. Okay, and then let's take a look at the order that it's executed. If okay, I'll just do that. Okay, So if you go to the host directive, the first one in the list is the one that's executed fast. So this one, and then the preview directive, and then the actual host, like you can think about it as the parent directive. The same thing happens for the lifecycle hooks. So on the ng on init, ng on changes, up to all the other lifecycle hooks, this is the order in which you declare them in the array, is how they execute, and then the directive that is hosting all the directives is the one that executes last. So yes, that's I'll open it up to questions if anyone has a question or clarification. I can also go back if you want me to review something that I might have gone too fast on. Yeah. Yeah, no questions.
Oh, you said brief, but that was a lot of content within a short time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but really interesting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the new features of Angular. It's not that you probably wouldn't use it as much until you know when you need to use it, which is a few times. You'll see it in your code when you see like yourself using a bunch of directives over and over again in the same place. It helps you like encapsulate the functionality, but also it helps you like, let's say in this directive that we had here for the select and preview, we can actually hack our, so what we did here, I'll ignore this line here. Just paying attention to these two lines, in the same way that you can sort of like inject, you see the way the order is executed, the events. So this is, you can have a reference to the directive from the parent directive. So if let's say you want to like manipulate the nature of a directive using another directive and maybe add things on top of it, and then add another directive, it goes on and on, but you can sort of like modify how your directive works using other directives as well. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to review this later.
Yeah.
But I like the demo and everything. Pretty interesting.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. This is one of the new features. It's been there for a while, but I feel like it's not that well known as much as signals or any other things. But it's an interesting feature if you want to use it. Yeah. More questions? Clarifications, Pia. I can also go back to something if you want me to review.
Yeah, mine is not a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an applause for the same. So I hear people say that before in a demo, this won't be rocket science, but yours is literally rocket science, and it was good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I won't tell you when I prepared the presentation. That's yeah. Yeah, thanks.
I think I have a question.
Yeah.
So you see where you are handling errors.
Errors
on
in the templates.
I think yes.
Here.
Is there like let me not say better, but let me say better.
Yeah.
Because for example, if you have more input, so how can you make it? Because I was seeing like it is continuing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Can it be like much dynamic, or can we create something to pass to that and to handle everything?
Yeah, we can do that actually. I think that might be a use. Yes. So you will need to, that's an interesting question. You would need to maybe, like, let's say, because I'm assuming you won't be showing all the errors at the same time. you'd
Yeah.
want to show one error at one time. Like let's say in our case, if you select Jupiter, and then we do let's see, Venus. Venus, okay. I mean, I guess in our case, it's required. Oh, in our case, I guess there's only one error at a time. But I'm assuming like if you have multiple errors, you would need to, I think you can have a reference to the, yeah, you will need to probably have a reference to the form itself. So yeah, so maybe, yeah, I think you probably, because, okay, let's see. I think I'll do that in the code. So the implements the unit to init, and then I'm going to get a reference to the form itself. So I need that form, the planet form here. So let's do this. Form is equals to view childs, and then I'll read ng form, and then this the planet form dot. Oh, it's a signal. Errors. I need to know when it changes. So I think there's a function dot on. No, this is actually required because I know this is always defined. Then I don't need this. Dot value changes. Okay. And I think this returns an observable that we can subscribe to. Okay, value. Okay, whenever it changes, console.log this dot planet form dot, that's a signal, errors. Okay, let's see what that gives us. Planet is required. Okay, I'll do, it's not giving me the required one. Okay, let me choose Jupiter. Okay, no, I need Jupiter. And yeah, let me fix this error message here. Okay. And then if I pick Mars, and then if I go to Mercury, it's giving me the errors are null, but this should not be accurate because it has an error. 963 dot. I think the error must, okay. And I think that the way you can access the errors, it's been a minute. Okay, validation errors. Does anyone know how to access the errors? Dot controls. Okay, let me log the controls, see what you get. Mercury. Okay. So if you look at the controls, we only have planet. Maybe that's why. Okay. So if you go to the planets, this is name is planet and name is reference planet. It's only given me one control. And I wonder why. Because this is the ng model, change. Okay. Huh. But some ways you need access to the errors, and I think once you have those errors, then you can loop through you can maybe this might be a use case for using a directive, or I think you can loop through the errors. But yeah, I think that will be how I'd approach it. Somehow you need to access the errors and then like not have to, like as you're saying, like loop through all this because this is repetitive. Yeah. More questions?
Anyone has a question or a comment?
It can be about directives, or it can be anything else.
About Angular?
Even about Angular. I think I know why this is not ng model. Okay. Yeah, even about Angular, I'd be willing to answer as much as I know.
Yeah, I see John has a question or a comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe not a comment, just on the area question on how best we can also, a better way to handle the errors that were listed there, as many of them. Another option would be creating that that input as a reusable component. Therefore, we only have a single point of looping through all those times. So every time we need it, we don't need to rewrite those ifs. They're already there in the single component we reused.
Yeah, like this whole the whole component itself. Or you're referring to the...
We extract it as a reusable component, then we just call it.
Yeah. I mean, that would be how I'd approach it, especially if you're using if you know your forms are going to look the same in your application, and they'll probably have error messages, then you can reuse it. Yes, that's a good call out. Thanks. I see other people. I can't see who's in there, so I can't see who's raising their hand. So just ask whenever you have a question.
Someone else has a question, comment. Winnie, was your hand?
Yes, I would like to add on top of what Kamawa said. Maybe instead of creating it as a reusable component, you can also learn how to create forms from using JSON.
Yeah, JSON. And I think Angular allows you to. I think the interesting about Angular is like it gives you all the good building blocks, and then you can make it as easy as you can. And I think even as developers, as you keep working, I think for me, I found the more I work on a code base, the more you see places where you can improve. And this is for sure like one place where, I mean, one time is not bad. If it keeps happening that you're doing the same thing over and over again all over your application, then that's when you know, like, you need to refactor, you need to make it reusable in a way. Because I feel like that makes it more maintainable in the end. And you'll thank yourself for doing the work of making it reusable. Yeah.
Do we have a comment, question, another?
And directives, there's a lot. There's a lot of things in here, but I will share the repository as well after, if people to go through, and the slides, even though the slides are not that detailed.
I think a question would be, how can people reach you in case they have questions?
Yeah, Mimi, you can reach me. I'm on the WhatsApp group chat, so if the Kenyan NG Kenya group chat, you can also, I'm also on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn. I don't look at LinkedIn as much. Twitter, Blue Sky, on that same handle. Let's see, what's my handle? Oh, okay, I'll put my handle on the... Yeah, I'll put my handle in the chat if anyone is interested. If I can find the chat. But yeah, I think, I'll share the... Is there no chat?
Okay.
No, kuna chat.
Wayne, if you're listening, chat is turned off.
No problem. I think we'll definitely get it and share it with the committee members, and then also we'll add all the additional information in the video description section on YouTube.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So
I think Wayne has a question.
yeah. Wayne, uliza. I see Steve. Steven.
Yeah, Steve. Steve.
Hey, Lawrence. Hey, team. For me, I'll just comment on the presentation. It was really an eye-opening, especially learning about this great feature we have in Angular. For me, I didn't know it existed until today. And someone had said that it's with the theory part, it might seem to be a rocket science, but with the demo, we get to digest it and get to internalize when to use it. I might not understand it from the word go from this presentation, but I believe when I go to practice personally, I'll get the concept. Thank you.
Yeah. And I feel like Steven, you're saying a very important point. I feel like it's as devs, you always want to hear what's happening. Even if you won't use it today, you might come across a situation where you're like, there was that one use case where this thing might come in handy. So just exposing yourself to for me, that's what I try to do, like expose myself to as much content as I can, and engaging with others and learning. That's how when you go into a situation, then I feel like you'll get to figure it out, or remember that you heard about Directive Composition API, and then use it. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, Stacy.
Hello, Lawrence. Am I audible?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, yeah. So mine is just a comment. I'm really grateful. I'm also still like every day is a learning phase, and I'm happy that I'm captured enough, at least something, with using the Directive Composition API. Yeah, I'd like to say thank you. I think I'll go back to the video and like do more because I came in a bit late. But I also request for if maybe you can have the WhatsApp link because I don't have the Angular Kenya WhatsApp link. I'm not in there. Just a request for that. Yeah. I don't know how we can get it, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Wayne.
Wayne.
Hey, Stacy. I'm not sure if you have my contacts. If you do have, just WhatsApp me and then I'll share it with you.
Okay, sure. I do have. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? You see, we are a free community, so if you're shy, you can just say something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess a question I have for Linda, Wayne, what other talks are coming up next? If you have the schedule, or are you still planning that out?
Yeah, we do have the schedule. Let me just check it up. I think next week we do have, let me just check. We have a session on using OOP for code reusability in CRUD sites and Angular schematics introduction. And then the Thursday after, we have Angular control flow syntax. So the new control flow syntax, so the @if, @else, and @for. Yeah, so those are the two that are coming up, but we do still have another one, of course. We have another one for end-to-end testing. And then I think we also have another one on containerization of Angular applications.
Nice.
And we have NG Kenya.
Yeah, we do have NG. Yeah, NG Kenya coming up in July for sure.
Nice. So I think that's it then.
Yvonne, give Yvonne and then we close.
Yeah.
Cool. Hi everyone.
Hi.